coming out of university at that point, you then joined Altian.
Yes.
As a software engineer, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right? In Java and Oracle?
Yes.
I think I was really. Were you a good coder?
I was pretty good. I got certified in Java.
Your certificates don't mean anything.
Yeah. It was a great organisation. I have to say, and that was I still remember meeting all the leadership team, the executive, and even the board. The chairman they're all really nice people. Like, they were very easy to talk to, and they made you feel safe and comfortable, while also having a little bit of fun while in there. A lot of the people in the organisation were quite young.
Yeah.
So Magnus O'Driscoll, I think, is still there. He's the managing director.
Yeah.
And they just created an environment where you actually could learn and grow. I've done lots of courses in there. Like, I got certified in Oracle, so DBA essentially, Java. Built that. It gave me an opportunity to travel a little bit as well. So I've done my first stints in the UK with Altian. So as a consultant, went over to sort of a company called Energis. They don't exist anymore. So because it was our sort of transportation and transmission network, networks, SDH networks, that we were selling software for. You go out and you're meeting all these wonderful people in the UK and trying to talk up your products and understand their business needs, and then make changes or design changes and send it back to base camp. Where people, so that was my real first stint as a consultant. And
I spotted that you went from coding almost to consulting.
Yes.
As a client account manager.
Yes.
In that role. And I was going to ask who spotted the potential in you to do that?
I think it was probably, I don't remember if you remember the .com bust in 2001, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I'd been in Altian a few years at that stage.
Yeah.
And I'd played a couple of different roles. So, I was lead designer of one of the functions. So we did a whole re-platform of the old product, which was called TINAS. It was all C and multi front end to a Java back end with J2E objects, etc. .com bust happened 2001. All of a sudden we went from, when I joined the company, I think I was the 40th employee apparently.
Yeah.
We ballooned to 120, 130 within the first 18 months that I was there.
Yeah, right.
Then .com bust happened after I was there about 2 years, and we had to let go everybody. So we were back down to like 20 people.
Yeah, right.
So all of a sudden it was like, well, I need someone to go to the UK because the guy who's over there on holidays, can you go?
Yeah.
So I went, and we went around the room, who can go, who does it fit? Don, you know the products, you know everything. Do you want to give it a stint? So I sort of fell into it a little bit.
Okay.
And when you're going through, mass redundancies like that, I remember sitting on the days where they were making people redundant waiting for a phone call. They'd say, I want everybody in the office, everybody needs to be here. Between 10 and 11, the phone's going to ring.
Yeah.
And if you get a call, you have to come up to the HR office.
Yeah.
And everybody knew what was happening.
Yeah.
So you were sort of sitting there, it was like Squid Game. You know what I mean? It was just like...
It's interesting because a lot of people that go through that experience, there's the initial relief, but then you get that kind of survivor guilt.
Yes.
Did you experience that?
A little bit, because there was some really good friends that I'd made in my time there. And when they go, you sort of go, geez, why wasn't it me type of thing. Because some of them were really good people, and it's business decisions. And I've been in a number of organisations since where I quickly realised it's not personalities, it's not anything, it's a business decision that's made on a number of different factors, and it is what it is. So I quickly understood it. But to your point, when people were leaving and you were going to the leaving drinks, you're like, because a couple of them ended up falling out of IT altogether. They went and got different jobs and never went back.
It's interesting, that's a bit of a sliding doors moment, isn't it, in some ways? Not saying that you would have left IT at that point, but these moments early in your career can be quite, I guess, pivotal.
Yes.
In terms of what happens next. Again, it's interesting, I'm just reflecting, you were talking obviously about at secondary school.
Yes.
And the teacher tapped you on the shoulder for the job there at the race course, and then here you got a business going from 120 to 20.
Yeah.
You're probably too modest to share, but there's obviously something about you that makes people want to put you in the team.
I think there's probably, like I mentioned earlier, I was always a hard worker. Like, I was never afraid to roll up my sleeves and do anything. But I think it's, to me, there's elements of culture and EQ as well as IQ. So I think I like to see myself as somebody that checks in on people. I've always been like that. I'm a bit of a people person.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's tiring when you get home at night because you're talking half the day.
Yeah.
But I think it's just more, and it's always been important in my career, is it's not just what you do, it's sort of how you make people feel. You know, and that's how Jen made that comments in hers a couple of weeks ago, which is because I can go in and I just immediately relate. I've had enough different types of jobs as I was young to, you know, really connect with people.
Yeah.
Like I think at one stage I was a cleaner, I was a grounds maintenance person in a pregnancy test factory, of all things. But, you know, all of a sudden you start to appreciate what it's like to be a cleaner, you know, and you, as a waiter, I appreciated waiters. So even now when I go to cafes with my kids or with my older kids, you know, I always say, make sure you say thank you.
Yeah.
You know, because it's nice to be thanked when somebody,
you
know, even just hands you a menu or, you know, leaves the dish in front of you. It's nice to just go, hey, thanks, I appreciate that.
It's interesting what you say about, I guess, how people make you feel. It's not just what they say. In your career, who's been impactful in terms of how they've made you feel?
There's so many. Like I mentioned, like I look at the leadership teams across most of the organisations I've been in, and most of them there's been either a key member that I'd connect with.
Yeah.
And you could just have a conversation. And I've always just treated people like they're just people. Like hierarchy's never really been a thing.
Yeah.
So I always just see people as for what they are. They're just a bloke going to work, they might have family, might have kids.
Yeah.
So I try and talk to people, and the ones who are open to them conversations you sort of connect with, like Magnus O'Driscoll, like I mentioned in Altion. He was a great guy. I knew a lot about his family, about his history. You know, the rest of the leadership team in that organisation too, I always just spoke to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were up for it. They just have a chat. So Magnus was one. Accenture was a little bit different because I found that you didn't really have a core team that you just connected with.
Yeah.
Because you were placed out at different sites or customers, vendor places.
Yeah.
All the time. So it was always changeable. So you might go in and you'd catch up with some vendors and you'd talk to them or customers. So you'd strike up a relationship, but then you'd have to keep your guard up a little bit because you're a consultant and, you know, you can't get into, you know, nitty-gritties and make them real personal connections. It's probably, you need to keep it at arm's length. Coles.
Well, I was going to say, the worst thing for a consultant is to go native, right?
Yeah.
And to end up flipping to the client's problem.
Yes.
You're still there as a solution. You've got to understand the problem. You're still there as a solution provider.
Yes.
Before we go on to Coles, I was going to ask you about Accenture. So what motivated that move?
I think at the time, because I'd done the little elements of consulting in Altion, and where that organisation was obviously constrained, it was partially owned by the major telecom provider in Ireland at the time, which was Telecom Éireann. I could see there was a limit to where I could go, whereas Accenture, which were they just become Accenture at the time. They used to be Anderson Consulting.
Yeah.
They were just down the road. I'd heard a few people had gone and, you know, experienced good things.
Yeah.
I really wanted to push myself because people talk to me about, well, if you go in there, you're not just going to, you know, be coding, or you're not going to be, you know, managing, you know, a service desk or whatever the case may be. You could be doing anything at any time. And I was always curious. Always curious as a kid.
Yeah.
Still am. It's just something natural. Like, you know, as soon as I see something on the TV, I'll Google it. You know what I mean? If I go, I wonder what that is. And that's what really took me into Accenture. So major organisation, great reputation, and I just thought I'll give it a whirl.
Was moving into a big organisation like that natural for you?
I'd throw my hat at anything.
Yeah.
So I think I like to make myself uncomfortable sometimes because I can't really do BAU. I get a little bit itchy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was probably an itch that I needed to scratch.
Yeah.
And to see whether I could go with it. I think the organisation itself, it's a little bit, and I talk to my kids about this sometimes, with the older kids, really around work, and if you're going to move into professional industry, you should go work for one of the big firms, because it really sets the scene for, you know, your work ethics. And if you can survive in that place, you'll have lots of fun because you get to travel, and, you know, it's sort of work hard, play hard.
Yeah. What's the shelf life, do you think, in consulting?
When I was there, they said 3 years. If you lasted more than 3 years, you're probably institutionalised and you'll stay there forever.
Yeah.
Because it's really up or out type of mentality in a lot of them environments. So you either progress and go to the next level, or you probably go a bit stale and they'll either get rid of you or you'll fall out yourself. I lasted 3 years. At the end, I was probably a little bit burnt out. It was a very different environment. So coming from Altion, whereas I'd see it as a really caring and you were sort of taken care of by the leadership team, and you didn't get exposure to a lot of the administration and just the back end stuff. They just let you do what you wanted to do, do what you were good at. So coding or go speak to consultants, but I didn't have to think of stuff like how many hours did I charge that customer, and book your own flights, book your own accommodation, but travel, all the stuff that you'd sort of take for granted. You get to Accenture, all of a sudden you're organising it all yourself, and if you needed some advice, you have to literally look up on their intranet to go, who's an expert in that? And then reach out yourself. You couldn't go to somebody and go, hey, do you know anybody that does X, Y, or Z? It was really around, being, really motivated and resourceful to sort of get stuff done on your own patch.
I'd imagine it also teaches you the commerciality of time.
100%.
As you say, you're always on a timesheet. Back to a client. I don't know if you had some kind of targets around billable hours and all that kind of stuff, I'd imagine.
100%.
Then there's probably an extreme of that, but I think then coming back into industry, it teaches you the importance of the dollars you're spending. It's not just on I don't know, the assets or the capex you're spending the money on. It's putting 10 people into a meeting for 2 hours is pretty expensive.
Yes, 100%. And you do start to get that commercial lens on things, and there's probably a little bit of an attitude towards consultants as well. So you sort of understand both sides of the fence. So coming back in, you go, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to sell me a little bit more. So you sort of have that conversation, and especially even now in today's world, sometimes people talk to me and I go, right, okay, can we just stop for a second? I'm actually ex-Accenture, so I know what you're trying to do. Let's just go with the outcomes that I'm trying to achieve today and talk about other stuff later.
Yeah, that makes sense. I saw through that time you spent a lot of time in retail projects in particular. What did that kind of teach you about industry? Retail
is a very different industry. It's all about the margins and the customer and end to end. At the time, you get exposed to different elements of it. So whether if it's the customer side, it's about how do we sell the product, how do we market the product, how do we track the product. It's always inventory. Everything's about inventory. But then it depends on the retailer that you're in. It's you can move into, like, if you're a vertical retailer, it's how do we design the product. How do we, from ideation right through to getting it on the shelf and selling it? It's a very different way of thinking as well. So, if you look at Coles, which is grocery, versus Target, which is merchandise and product, it's two completely different things.
As a I guess a technologist, let's say, working in that sector, how important is it to understand, I guess, the cut and thrust of what the industry is doing to be able to develop those solutions?
It's very important. I think with any industry, I think it's important to understand first off the business and what you're trying to achieve. And that's what I in most of the organisations I've gone into, I really immersed myself in it. Like in Coles, I remember when Ian McLeod came in, he used to make people go to stores and spend at least a week in stores every year, just to reconnect and understand what the business is about. And I took that to even further extremes, like where when I got onto logistics projects, I'd go out and spend some time in the distribution centres, because it's all well and good looking at a diagram on a page, but unless you go out and actually talk to the people and figure out the challenges that they have on a day-to-day basis, whether it's rostering or the receiving processes and the off-boarding process, packing processes. It's all well and good talking about it until you actually go out and actually try and do it, and you go, yeah, that's a pain. Surely there should be easier ways of doing it than that. And how much paper used to be involved, and all of a sudden it's you try and digitise everything. But a lot of it's down to data and data quality, and in retail it's really down to inventory.
Because they have to move that around quick, right?
Yes.
As in, it's cash sitting on the shelves that they need to turn around.
But it's the turnaround time of getting from, like I mentioned, either the order process to getting it available to the store. And it was shelf lives and different concepts that are, really there in retail that, are really important. Because if you got fresh produce, you need to get it from the farm to the store really quickly. So what's the most optimal time? And then get your ordering right. How much do I need? Well, coming up to Easter, right, probably going to need a little bit more of this, that, and the other, because that's what people normally eat. So, when ramping up and ramping down and using historical data to drive your forecasts and all that type of stuff, that's the stuff that really drives that industry.
And I guess that's where data's really transformed that industry.
Yeah, 100%.
From your kind of traditional supermarkets. And I think, I'm sure, did I see, maybe I'm getting my wires crossed, did you do some work with Tesco through that process?
I did elements with Tesco back in the day when I was in Accenture. Yeah, there was stuff.
Because they were the kind of poster child with Clubcard, and I think at one point, 1 in every £8 in the UK was spent with Tesco, retail pounds.
They were like reference for everybody almost globally. There was always them and Walmart, so what Walmart's done, and Carrefour in Europe. But Tesco's definitely, and they had some issues when they tried to go into the States and into Asia, and probably pulled back and refocused on some of the basics. But they're an absolute behemoth of a company, and I still love going. Like, I went with Joanne only a few weeks ago when I was back in Ireland. The first thing you went with Tesco's and have a look around and see how they're managing stuff, and the price points, and
it's a pretty impressive organisation. As you say, it sits the benchmark globally.
Yes.
I guess talking about the UK.